I think we're going to get started if we want.
Yeah, sounds good. Welcome everyone to August 24th, DIGG Dojo. We've got a bunch of updates on the KPI options and to get into a little bit more discussion on the stability, some great discussion on the request for feedback channel, especially some stuff on the 1500 manager. See him on right now, but it would be awesome if he can chat about that a little bit. Um, But I don't know, music, you've been putting in a ton of work getting the options calculated and added into DIGG Finance. And I think that's I checked the other day. It looks good. So do you want to start us off with a quick presentation on options and the steps from here?
Yeah. Um, Sorry, Wasabi, you're kind of breaking up there a little bit. Um, but I think just update on options. At this point, everybody who has inquired or had questions through support or DM'd me or Omnifarious, we've gotten back to, and it looks like we've finalized the list. We've provided it to the dev team, and they're in the process of minting with UMA. The next steps here are going to look like something along the lines of this, and I'll defer to Tritium on timing. But we're in the process of actually minting with UMA right now. The actual options tokens will be airdropped, I believe, through the Merkle tree. Is that the right way to say it? And then
Yeah, I mean, I think the plan is, so we've got to go to minted, and then we're basically going to just emit them through the Badger tree. So it'll be like when you can claim your DIGG and all the other tokens there, the drops will also show up.
yes. And when that happens, we'll obviously announce something so everybody can, know to check. It's not just going to be done and then, days later you might see it or you might not see it. But as expected, like with every probably dev team, but especially the Badger team, they've got a backlog of items of a lot of importance, and so this is one of them. They're obviously prioritizing it, and when it happens, we'll let you know. And then in terms of redeeming them, if you look on the Badger.finance page for I believe it's where the DIGG page is, there's a redeem button up in the top right corner that's grayed out right now. Obviously, we need to wait through. There's still 7 days left, 6 after today. So we're not actually through with rebase mining. So if you were to theoretically get your options today, there'd be nothing to redeem because it wouldn't have been finalized. And so the last day of the rebase mining period ends on the 30th, after which you'll be able to redeem your options for DIGG. Anything to add there, Tritium?
The options will be claimable in DIGG, right? That options token that needs to be converted into DIGG. I got that.
Okay, so let me explain. We are working, and we know we're going to have this all done by the 30th. Yeah. So we're working now to mint these options. So we're taking a bunch of DIGG. We're sending it to UMA. We're minting the options, right? We're going to take the options and we're going to emit them through the Badger tree so that everybody can claim them. Then after the 30th, once UMA does their Oracle vote, right, and determines how many rebases there have been, those options will switch to something that you can at some point claim, I think, underlying BDIGG. So the button on the DIGG.finance will be like once you have the options and after the 30th when they've become valid to actually claim to burn the options and claim the BDIGG. And what we're working on this week, and I really think we'll have it done by the end of the week, is basically minting these options that you'll then burn and basically feeding Wall of Wes's kind of distribution and emitting that all through the Badger tree so that you can claim it.
Thanks, Tritium. Before we go on to anything else, any questions about that first? Just want to pause for a moment and just see if it's pretty self-explanatory and straightforward, but
they're like the shortest lived token ever. Maybe some of them will like linger around forever, but like most of these drops will be around for like 5 days.
Yeah, and actually, this actually is a good point. Maybe skip to this a little bit ahead, but this entire options process from when Jonto initially built it in April and had the idea to use it, and then when we said like, hey, let's run this in perpetuity so that there's a reason for people to continue to hold and buy and mimic like more of a strategic vault that might have someone do this, like with like an elastic vault with ample sense or something. Now, the next phase of this, we have the final day of options ends on the 30th, and that means that there's going to be a snapshot on the 31st to start preparing for the next round of options. The next round of options, we're going to look at how to extend this out longer. I think what we want to try to do is formalize and scale this, not just from an operational standpoint, so we can automate the queries and create more real-time awareness in terms of people's positions, but also we want to maybe extend it out to a 3-month period, so we can actually have more of a similar to other options programs out there, have actual cycles, and see how we can evolve this into a more permanent kind of appendage, if you will. Because running it monthly is probably going to become very labor intensive as we go forward. And so as we think about all these things, there's going to be a lot more discussions on it. But in that case, there could be a situation if this was a 3-month cycle, which is very similar to normal options for stocks. You could have options and you could get them with 2 months left. And then that creates really unique and interesting scenarios. But go ahead.
I think it's interesting, right? Because UMA released these options, and the idea is it's like a trustless way to do it, right? And I think the first drop was pretty trustless in the sense that like they were minted beforehand, right? And then the second one, the community was like starting to take over, and like we never even minted the options, right? Which made sense because they were worth nothing. But I think, the actual idea of the UMA options is that you like mint them at the beginning to show everybody that like, hey, these tokens are there and you can claim it, and it's no longer, right? Like there's no longer human decisions to be made, right? Like this is now happening. And so, I mean, I agree. I think either we need to get to the point where it's like, okay, we're doing this, like we're making all the decisions and then it's done and it's running until the end. Or like we could just emit the DIGG, right? Like the reality is, and we should do it because that's what we're doing, but like the whole process of minting all of these options and then sending them to people to then claim and then claim again, right? All within a 5-day period is a little bit ridiculous. And it would be much easier to just like send everybody their DIGG. I mean, so like, I think we should decide what we want to do, right? But it's fine we're doing it because that's just how it happened. And fundamentally what happened is the community took over, right? And so there was more trust in the entities that were making these decisions and less need to have this like trustless model, which is also fine, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think, no, it's spot on. And I actually asked, I don't know if Clayton or Sean from UMA are going to be able to join. They've got a conflict right now, but they might towards the end. But I think the main takeaway for the community at this moment is, we're iterating as we go. We're kind of, this is like super buzzwordy and I hate saying it, but it's kind of like, you're building the plane while you're flying it. And that's been a really exciting thing, I think, with these options, and we're going to see them unlock and provide some value. But some of the flow is a little bit, like as Tritium said, it's kind of redundant, right? And so I think this next round, we're going to have another snapshot on the 31st. And one of the exciting things I think we're looking to do is like with the community and UMA both is like, look at this past 3-4 months and how can we smooth things out? How can we make the options? How can we improve upon it, evolve them, and make it a more seamless experience for everyone? So more to come on that. But I think for now, the options are on their path of being redeemed. And the next snapshot, which is probably the most critical for everybody for holders, would be on the 31st, which is coming up here shortly.
One thing that's come up over and over as a question that we should just go over again here. I'm sure there's more relationship of the options contract to the how that. So let's say
Wasabi, I can hear almost nothing. You're breaking up really bad. I don't know if it's just me or everyone else.
No, it's not just you.
Sorry about that. Let me try to change my connection here.
Now we're going down. Vipes is burning right now with Wasabi on his dial-up. And now we're going down this AOL path of, this will date me, but I remember getting home from high school on AOL and getting on Messenger, and that was like the coolest thing with all my friends.
All right, is that any better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
To say is like make sure that people are aware that the options that they have are a claim on the prize pool and that claim will stay constant, assuming you don't sell to further rounds of options. So the number of options that you have is a claim on the share of the pool, and you mint and redeem those, but then in the rollover, you keep your share, assuming you don't sell, and that will roll over to future options. So it's a little bit confusing to think of this other number of units. It's even if you claim and redeem in this period, you'll still have your share.
Yeah, this is. You're breaking up a little bit, but I think I get the general sense of what you're asking. So I'll take it from here. Yeah, this is a good point. Like each iteration is a standalone on its own. So there's no reason to hold your options. Like once you get your options, you want to redeem them. The next like participation in the next round is based on factors in the preceding round. So when the next round starts, it's based on whether you held through the previous round. Because again, we want like the whole, the benefit is we need new buyers to come in and we need people to hold DIGG, right? So if you held through the previous round from snapshot, basically that's the beginning and ending of each month. So on July 31st, there's going to be a snapshot, and it's essentially going to look at the previous 30 days and see if people held up to 75% of their position. And if they did, then they're able to carry over their options and participate in the next round, right? If they didn't, if they sold less than 75%, then they can still carry over their options, but it's going to be weighted accordingly. So if you sold 80%, you're going to carry over 20% of your options, which is much less. Now, at the same time, if you don't hold any DIGG today and you're like, hey, I want to participate in the next round, then you're able to buy in, and that's a slightly offset cycle that goes from the 15th to the 15th. And so the way to think of it is right now, if you were to buy DIGG, you wouldn't be participating in the current round, but you'd be starting to build a position for the next round. Now, the reality of this is up until now, this is the first time we've had to deal with it. We've had enough sellers to offset and provide things like multipliers or allow people to get a lot of options. This first round, this relies a lot of financial engineering on my part, which is why we had to update the options this round. But it's kind of like trying to land a plane, but not knowing where the runway is yet. And so we obviously saw a massive wave of buyers come in, more so than before, and that diluted the options. And so each round you're going to see options probably get diluted, and so it gives an incentive for people to carry over because it's going to be hard to replicate their position in each round. That's the first point. The second point is that with each new round, we're going to have to think about some new ways, whether it's adding more options to the program, and it might dilute some carryover, but it's still going to be better than trying to buy back in. But we've got to figure out a way to ensure that this can run on a quarterly cycle and kind of be a little bit more of a autopilot. And so these are all the things we want to discuss, but the core of it will remain the same, which is basically if you hold in the previous round and carry over your options, it's always going to be more beneficial than buying. And if you buy in the round, then you're eligible to carry over in the next round, which is starting to build a bigger position. And each round will stand on its own. I know that's a lot, and I know this community is kind of like walking through more complex kind of financial engineering when it comes to some of these things, and but we want to make this. The goal is to make this simpler as we go. Like we understand that it's not like as straightforward as like an APY, but we think it's much more beneficial for everyone. It's a win-win because the community. The options payout can be higher than an APY. It can be more immediate. And for the DAO, it's a more strategic form of emissions. And so I think considering how to evolve this into a more permanent form for DAOs and for communities is a really cool thing to be working on. Does that answer your question, Wasabi? I know I kind of went into a couple other things, but just in terms of the differentiation.
Yeah, it does. And apologies for the connection. We're in an Airbnb this week. But yeah, it does. I think just making sure that it's clear that this is going to carry over, and when you redeem your options, you're not giving up anything in the future in terms of your participation in the program.
Not at all. I would actually just want to reiterate, everybody should redeem their options. There's no benefit to not redeeming their options. We don't know what the expiration will be, but probably after a 2 to 3 month period, unredeemed options will just go back into the pool. So you should redeem your options. The only thing that decides your options in the next round is your B dig and dig positions. So that's what's going to inform the next round in receiving options, not whether or not you hold your options from round to round. There's no advantage to doing that.
So really, you want to redeem your options by the 15th if you want to get that buy, in a sense, or that additional dig calculated for the next round. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like if you want to increase your option position, then you should redeem your options by the 15th. So that way you can get it more options in the next round. That's a very, very good point. And yeah, so that's any other questions on this?
Token ever.
Say again.
It's the shortest lived token ever. I'm just laughing because of the amount of work that we spend running around doing all this stuff. It's fine, but it's funny.
No, it's true. It's going to be like a 2-day to 2-week live token or something like that.
You know, like anybody smart will not hold this token for more than 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, they shouldn't. I mean, unless they just forget about it.
Do you think that this cycle will be the last 1 month cycle and we'll be able to go on a 3 month going forward from the 31st, or are we going to need to do another month as a transition?
I mean, I think that's something we want to discuss with the community. I'm open to either. I think the sooner we can start moving to a more scalable model that can, like, not only does time allow for things to smooth out, but it also allows for more interesting kind of opportunities and like just game theory to be played into it. Because if you have options and you have them for 2.5 months before you can redeem them, then not that I would advocate this or the DAO would, but I imagine there's a lot of degenerates out there that are going to create secondary pools or secondary markets. And like, there's just a lot more, I think, interesting things that can come about. And then just from an operational and maintenance perspective, if we can create a process that's repeatable without a lot of human intervention, it's preferable, because right now, this is a very much a manual process for 2 to 3 people. And that doesn't even include Tritium and the dev team who are having to do stuff like every month, right? Like that, we would like to spread that out so it's not a monthly exercise, but a quarterly exercise. But the principles remain the same. And like, that's something we would want to discuss more with the community to talk about. But my preference would be trying to move to a quarterly cycle sooner. That's also just because I'm having to do model calculations every 2 weeks. But if we do another month, I think that's fine. I think we also need to talk about, like, just the reality that I think we need to figure out, if we unlock 88% of the rewards this round, we'd have to consider allocating another couple percent to the round. I also think it would make sense to try to see if there's, like, this is probably going too far out there, but just even partnerships, if there's ways that other teams would want to contribute, like if this could be a viable product or something. So there's a lot more to discuss in the second round, but I think it's something that after this ends, we'll open up the conversations a lot more and see how we can create a better and more refined product.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it would be interesting to find, like, for example, a new LP, and instead of, looking at, so locking a bunch of that LP, whatever it is, right? And then taking a bunch of those LP tokens plus a bunch of the Gov tokens from whatever LP provider and putting those in a dropped, and then measuring like how much LP people have. Or I don't know, there's lots of cool, fun things you can do. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think what I'm saying, if I don't want to be too, like, what I'm saying is I don't think the rewards pool has to be defined just by dig. I think you always want a percentage of dig in there, but I think there's actually a lot more we can think about and do with this. And so, like, getting into the next iteration and discussing this is exciting for me.
Looks like there's a request from Steve Brew to speak. I think you should be able to accept that now and jump up and talk if you got a question or want to say something. While that's happening, should we move to the, it looks like we're about at equilibrium now with DIGG, so would be a good time to talk about the rest of the TCL injection, because it seems like the optimal time is when it's right around peg. So, Weezik, do you want to give us an update where we are on that?
I'll just say, like, this has been a lot of discussion trying to figure out the right timing. I think we're all aligned on it. I don't know, Tritium, if you want to talk a little bit about it, but right now it looks like we're on track to do it within a range of like, 1.05, between we're basically probably right within that range right now. We don't want to go below 1.1 in the ratio, but it also is dependent on, again, lots of priorities with the team and such. So I don't know, Tritium, if you want to discuss it a little bit, but it is something we're preparing for.
I mean, basically, somebody's got to modify the script a little bit, because this time we're investing. Basically, the metric for how much we're investing has to do with Bitcoin, not DIGG. So it's like 26 point something Bitcoin and then corresponding DIGG under 1.1, I think. So we got to get that script written. That should happen today or the next day. And then, like the dev multi-sig requires a bunch of very busy people to come together and sign stuff. And there's like a huge stack of stuff. I've kind of mentioned that it's a priority, but we'll put it in there. And then, yeah, I don't know, sometime over the next week or so, it should happen. But it's, unfortunately, we're working on getting to a better situation, but that multi-sig has to control like huge amounts of capital. There's a lot of like personal risk to being on that multi-sig. So there's not a lot of people that want to do it. And then like we actually have quite a lot of ask there, and it just takes a while sometimes.
I'm gonna correct me if I'm wrong, Shane, but this is what I'm hearing you say. It's a priority among a lot of priorities. It's being figured out right now, and the intent is to do it in the next few days.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, cool.
It's of the priorities. It's a relatively simple one, and it is near the top of the list, so it shouldn't take that long.
I think the only other topic, and then we can open it up for questions, discussions, wherever makes sense, is I know last time there was discussion on Stability Vault. I know Jonto created a channel for more discussion, 1500 Badger. I know you were in there quite a bit, and a few others. It looks like we're in a place where it probably makes sense just to kind of, obviously we need to be above peg, but at least to get everything running so we can kick off some UAT. I don't know if there's any other updates or if Jonto happens to be on the call, but I think that's really about the update there. So again, moving forward with it, but I think the intent is to let it run some UAT before opening it up as a guarded launch. And obviously we got to be above peg for it to run too. So
yeah, so basically one of the things that needs to happen is that there needs to be a bot that pokes it every day to like have it sell. And so that was not finished yet. And then we're working on that, but the bot looks at Chainlink, and DIGG is still rebasing off the sushi oracle. So Cookies is in the process of trying to figure that out. Within the next day or two, we should have that set up, and then we can start actually having the thing trade. And then like once it's traded for a few days and we've had a chance to set some parameters, like we can talk about a guarded launch and opening it up for like 10 DIGG or 10 Bitcoin. Or yeah, I think within a week also we should have that actually functioning, and then we can start talking about what's next.
So that is basically everything we had on the agenda. Just running through it. I don't know if there's any questions. Is Steve Brew able to? I see his hand still up. I don't know if we can. Wasabi, if that's you, they can let him up.
I think he put his hand. I've invited him, so he has to now accept the invite.
Okay.
I see 1500 Badger is on here. I know you had some interesting comments on the Stability Vault and looking at kind of like modeling past scenarios. If you're in a place to talk, I would love to get you on about that.
Hey
okay.
guys. Sorry, I didn't see the accept invitation at the top. Sorry, I got on a little late. I just wanted to ask a question regarding the WBTC reserve that was spoken about. So if you mentioned it and discussed it, I apologize. But is there any kind of development so like people will be able to see how big the reserve gets from when, let's say, DIGG is over peg and there's supposed to be some sale of DIGG to build a WBTC reserve. So if it's under peg, they can buy to get it back to peg?
I'm not sure if I entirely follow. Are you referring to Stability Vault or?
Yeah, just, the mechanism that was supposed to, I guess, be built up. So if like DIGG's over peg, then there's some sort of WBTC reserve that basically functions to help, like if it's below peg, to get it back up to peg. Now, I apologize if you guys mentioned it. I got on about 10 minutes after this started, so I was just curious if that is something that will be visual, like how big the reserve gets. I'm not sure, like how big the DIGG vault or the DIGG reserve will be. Is it visible to DIGG holders or anywhere on the site whenever it goes live or active?
So Tritium, I'll take a stab at this, but let me know if I'm wrong. My understanding is that if we do a guarded vault and launch it, like if we start off with some, let's say a little bit of DIGG, and it's above peg, and we want it to sell and create WBTC reserve. After the mechanics are tested, the bot's running, everybody feels comfortable with it. If we open a guarded launch for, say, 10 DIGG and 10 WBTC, the vault would be where you can see those different positions growing based on the trays of the bot. Am I right there?
I was just starting to follow you. You were discussing it, I guess. So I apologize because I got on a little bit late. But when does that actually start?
Well, so it hasn't started yet. We need to get these bots running. There'll be some money in it then, or there's a little bit of treasury money in it, and then hopefully in the next week or two we'll be able to roll it out. Right. In terms of the UX, I actually don't know. We could and I guess we'll see, right? Whether it's just like another set where you'll see like the amount of WBTC and DIGG that are in it, right? Or that you hold in it like any other set, or whether we built like a separate pane that has some more details about how it's working. If there's not a separate pane, like we can use tools like DAOWatch or Dune, or like it's all on-chain analytics, so we can come up with some dashboards and get the kind of analytics that you're looking for.
Got it. And then last question, when do the DIGG options actually go up to be claimed? I'm asking for myself and anyone else that came on late, just to repeat that part.
So as soon as possible, we're working on getting through it, and I'm hoping to have it done this week, and absolutely 99% sure before the 30th, right, when we will be able to claim them. But it's near the top of our priority list. There's people working on it, and soon.
Awesome. And lastly, thanks for all your guys' hard work. Really, really happy about everything that's going on, the momentum that DIGG has. So great job.
You guys, can I go ahead? I wanted to ask just a quick question. Especially for you, Wisek. I understand that each 15th and 30th, that's where when you calculate the options for each holder. I just wanted to get some insight into how this process, how were you handling this, to see if there's if there are any recommendations we could do, or how we could help out, and also to have some insight on how it works, the inner workings of it, right?
So one of the things we want to do that Kasudo has already started working on is we want to, right now the snapshots there's basically 4 snapshots, right? So on the 31st or prior to the next event, there's going to be a snapshot that looks at just the previous event. And so that snapshot is looking at the start of the previous event and the beginning of the new event, and just sees did address's position stay the same, increase, decrease, but it's just looking to see if they can carry over the options from event to event. And then at the 15th, so after that event starts, on the 15th, that's when the ability for new buyers to come in closes. And so at that point, the options can start to be calculated. That's when the final kind of calculation comes out. Now, obviously, the reason on the 16th, so when that 15th ends, the 16th picks up, that starts to roll over into the next event. So if you think about it, it's like two periods that overlay on each other. It's basically the 30th to the 30th and the 15th to the 15th. And it's kind of this rolling snapshots that kind of inform each other. So the 30th to the 30th informs the next event in terms of based on holding. And then the 15th into the 15th is always the window of opportunity for new buyers to come in. And if they come in after the 15th, and they're just coming into the next event that's going to open. Now, what we would like to do is increase the level of snapshots and also increase just the visibility around them. So that's something that Kasudo, who's been working on he works a lot on our Dune queries and stuff for Badger, has been already starting to create, and so that it could be like a daily snapshot that's constantly tracking positions and we can basically program everything in, so the modeling just happens automatically. Omnifarious, myself, and Gasuda have already started this. And then obviously this would be something, it wouldn't solve for people trying to see their positions prior to the event closing, because we just don't know what the buy sell ratios will be. But we're trying to figure out ways that we can maybe make some conservative assumptions, so that way, if people come in and buy and dilute the options a lot in the final 2 weeks, it won't take away from people's positions, but if anything, if people don't buy, it'll increase their positions. Sorry, I know that's a lot. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, I'm just going to go over it so to see if I got it like clear. So if I buy between the first day of the month and the 15th, I would get that would be my window of opportunity, right? To get additional options.
Technically, it'd be from the 16th of the previous month to the 15th.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, now it makes sense. From the 16th to the 15th of the next month, that would be my window of opportunity to get options. And if I buy after that, it will roll over to the next month. So I would I would see those options on the 16th of the next month. Correct.
Like if somebody came in and bought today, and they don't have any options, they bought today, they wouldn't be able to participate in the current month because that window is closed on the 15th. But they would be eligible for the next period for options.
Makes sense. And then on the 30th is when we see, okay, you got these options, and we check if you are able to claim any of those, correct?
So on the third, so in this in 7 days, the 31st, there's going to be a snapshot, and it's going to look at just the previous 30 days, and it's only going to look at option holders. So it's going to look at everybody that had options over the previous 30 days, and it's going to look to see did you decrease your position? If you sold 100% of your DIGG, then you're not eligible to bring over your options to the next round. And if you sold less than 25% of your DIGG, then you're able to bring over your position, and you're eligible for a multiplier if there is one. Again, the multiplier is dependent on if we have sellers. So if there is a multiplier, you're eligible for it. But even if you just carry over your position, it's still more beneficial than trying to buy in, because as this grows, theoretically, options should become more and more diluted, because we want more buyers to come in. If DIGG is going through positive expansion, and it's going to require more and more buyers to come in, then more buyers coming in will slowly dilute options being awarded. So holders always have, if you think about it, holders going back 3-4 months are always going to have the best starting position for options. So if it would be very hard. It would probably take 10 times the capital to receive the same amount of options today if you were rewarded them 4 months ago. Because you have more buyers.
As more people start to buy, we have less periods where we have multipliers, right?
No, it's just that as more buyers come in, there's fewer. It's just a matter of more people coming in and buying, and fewer options to go around.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, but you just said that the multiplier depends if there are sellers or not, correct? So if there are no sellers, there would be no multiplier. So also hoarding more options would be harder, right?
If there's no sellers, there's no multiplier. But what I'm saying is that even if you just carry your positions over, it's still better than trying to buy in, because new buyers are constantly going to be diluted by the fact that we have more DIGG to buy and more buyers are coming in. So
it's clear.
Yeah.
It's clear. Okay,
the
awesome.
benefit, it's trying to incentivize both sides of the equation here. We want to encourage people to hold, because if you're holding options from the previous round, there's a reason to hold. Theoretically, right now, as we approach the 31st, if you had options and you sold, and you're like, okay, I want to make sure I get my options to the next round, then you'd be incentivized to say, okay, I'm going to make sure my position's normalized or something. But if you don't and you lose those options and then you want to come back in the next round and you buy in before the 15th, depending on how many options you have, it's probably going to take tremendously more capital and buying power to try to achieve the same amount of options. And then at the same time, we want people to come in and buy. And the incentive there is that if you buy and then you can start carrying over your position each round, then you're starting to build up a better position than new buyers will in the future. So the incentive is to hold, the incentive is to buy, and coupled together, that kind of overlaps and creates a, it aligns behaviors with incentives as, DIGG goes through positive expansion. Aligns incentives with behaviors.
It makes a lot of sense if you are in a context. Maybe I'm not being like super rational here, like financially, so excuse me. But like it makes a lot of sense if we are trying to at the stage where we want we are trying to consolidate like a base layer of holders and try to bring new people into buying. But I think like there's as you said before, there's a point where buyers will be disincentivized to buy. Like options will not be enough of an incentive because a lot of money would get you like not so. It wouldn't get you a lot of options, right? There will be a point where if everyone's holding and more people want to get in, like they would have to buy a lot of DIGG just at a high price just to get very few options. That's correct?
Correct. And I think two things here. One, that's good. Like we want this to have like this is kind of where we're thinking about the next phase. Personally, I don't think we're there yet because DIGG's gone through 4 months of contraction, and so the upside is larger than the downside, in my opinion. Again, that's just my personal opinion here. But the idea is that you do want to be a kind of a checks and balance on this, and that's where we want to kind of continue iterating and improving upon it. Secondly, again, I think options are a kind of sweetener, but if you're buying DIGG purely for the options, then honestly, this sounds crazy for me to probably say this, but I would say that individual probably shouldn't be buying DIGG because like the purpose of buying DIGG is to take advantage of, right now at this moment, is to take advantage of potential positive expansion, which is going to be a much more financially and like incentive than options they are themselves. But if someone was buying DIGG purely because they're like, oh, I want to get some options, then they're probably not fully aware of the upside downside of DIGG. And that's probably not the best investment. I would probably say that's probably not the best investment for them to make because exactly what you're saying. Like, if they're coming in purely for options and then they're not aware of the downside risks as well as the upside opportunities, then it's probably not going to end the best for them, right?
Okay, yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I'm just trying to be like the guy who asks the questions, so like everyone listening also has like some context over this, because I know I've seen you answer this like 1,000 times in the chat, and now that we have this recording and everything, maybe I can go through it afterwards and just write it down, and we can like just straight up direct people to an FAQ or some kind of document that is like curated, so we are not like answering the same thing over and over again. And also because it's interesting to hear your point of view.
Don't apologize at all. I actually greatly appreciate it. I mean, the reality is that this is not like DIGG already is a more complex token, and then on top of that we're layering options, which is also complex. So I think this needs to be discussed more and more, and so I'm happy to answer the questions. I think to your point, probably would be the most useful right now is almost like an infographic that just very easily kind of translates some of this into just like a simple kind of like infographic that can just like follow visually and kind of say like, oh, okay, if I do this happens. If I do this happens. Yeah. And I would be totally supportive and actually take some more time, TomZoX, if you were looking to try to do something like that. So
yeah, I will. I suck at like the graphic part, but I think I can deal with the info part and get the graphic part from elsewhere. But yeah, I've been yeah, I just had to get like everything together so I can sit down and put this on. Do you have any extra comments on this? Because there was something else I wanted to discuss, but I don't want to take like the monopoly of the whole DIGG dojo.
No more comments right now, but I know 1500 Badger. I don't know if you're still up here, but I think you wanted to talk about stability vaults. Maybe
sorry.
give no, that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I could just go over like what I've noticed so far. I know everyone's been busy, so Jonto just got back to me and said that he's like looking what I did, but I mean, I can just describe what I did, which is I took the Excel sheet that he had given us, which had some simple model in it. It looks like it's just selling Bitcoin and DIGG, based on how much the price has changed recently and whether or not we're above peg, whether or not we're below peg. And I just went in and did like a brute force statistics analysis on it. I basically just took all of the parameters that you could adjust and adjusted them. And there was just some really simple gains that I got really quickly, which like one of them, the parameter was just like had the wrong sign. But the big like observations that I notice is that you can basically like tune the model in three ways. You can tune it for like absolute dollar return, absolute DIGG return, and absolute Bitcoin return. So I went for some sort of like middle ground that produces a really, really nice, dollar return. And this is when I'm talking about the return, I'm comparing it to just like holding DIGG, right? Holding the same amount of DIGG and doing nothing. This thing is returning like 200% over just holding DIGG. So I mean, for me, that gives me a little bit of a red flag, just because it's like so little data that the model is looking at. So like to just to optimize the parameters based off of that little bit of data, there can be like some overfit. So what I did for now is just split the data set in half, essentially like before this major run in the options program and then after it. And I think like the next thing I could do is like divide it up into even smaller chunks. Again, the problem is like there's so little data.
Is it looking at just DIGG since launch or a subset of that?
Yeah, so the whole the big thing that I think we should, it's really hard to want to cherry pick it, but it's like that first like week or two of the DIGG launch really screws with the results, right? Like because you're acting like this thing had launched right when DIGG launched and was able to take full advantage of that like 4 to 1 peg or something and sell a bunch of DIGG at that moment. But yeah, anyways, the results that I got is the model like that was presented was returning like 2.3 DIGG from the initial like 3 DIGG investment, and then losing like almost all the Bitcoin. And I was able to get all of the Bitcoin back and a bit more DIGG by adjusting the parameters around.
And so this would be a return to DIGG deposited into the stability vault. And would the amount of DIGG that users put in affect that too, or what are the parameters?
Yeah, that was another thing I looked at, was the ratio of like the initial the initial launch of the vault, like the ratio of DIGG to Bitcoin, and it looks like a 3-to-1 ratio is like ideal, which is having about 3 times as much DIGG as there is Bitcoin in the vault. And so the return that you would be getting would be a return over just holding DIGG.
I think it makes sense. I mean, I looked at your results.
So is a depositor going into this vault, would you then need to deposit like 1/3 Bitcoin and 2/3 DIGG, or 3 times, would you need to deposit at that initial ratio or whatever ratio the vault was at? Or like, does the vault just take DIGG and then like move towards that ratio?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I honestly don't think it matters, right? Because naturally there's just going to be like this ratio of like what people want to put into the vault, and then through the vault's own model of buying and selling, it's going to generate more Bitcoin if it has excess DIGG.
Okay, makes sense.
So I mean, like someone depositing, if everyone was just depositing DIGG, then all the thing's going to do, first of all, is start selling their DIGG, and that makes sense, right? It's like the market's not behaving correctly, and this thing's like based off of some quantitative model.
Right. And my understanding though is it's going to sell the DIGG when DIGG is above peg and dropping, right? So it kind of actually increases or speeds up a return to peg and basically takes Bitcoin that then it can use doing the opposite on the underside. I'm not 100%, but
I mean, it just is a market participant, right? Like, so the model's just trying to capture equity, right? So it's like it sees that DIGG is like above peg at a certain rate, and that it likes or whatever. And like I said, the parameters I just went in and adjusted till they gave me the best fit without trying to overfit it. So yeah, I didn't actually go in and look yet. That would be the next thing to do, is like a more like rational qualitative analysis, and just see how it was actually selling the DIGG and selling the Bitcoin. What I did was just tune the parameters so that it would buy and sell in such a way where it gained Bitcoin and gained DIGG, compared to if it had just held the DIGG.
Yeah, and then I guess my other question, and I don't even know how you go about answering it, but so half of the goal of the vault is to like make money, obviously, right? But the other half of the vault is to like, as best as possible, support DIGG, right? So, and I don't know, is it the case that the most like economically beneficial kind of parameters are also like the most holistically healthy, or is there some like balance to be found there?
Right. That's what, like, I took it from having like a 400% return down to a 200% return, based on the fact that, over time, we don't want this thing to just sell. Like the best return it could have gotten, right, was just sell all of the DIGG at the top and then just like wait for the bottom, right? So obviously we don't want it to do that. So I adjusted it so that it would maximize having, the long-term amount of DIGG and Bitcoin that accumulates inside of the vault.
Cool. Makes sense.
Maybe it makes this, first of all, this is very helpful. Thanks. I wonder if it makes sense 1500 if when we get, as Jonathan gets more into this and runs like the, sets everything up to fund and run the UAT, maybe you could, I think the analysis you've done is deeper than anyone else has done. So maybe that could be the starting point for the parameters. And then as we go through and tweak it, we can kind of follow your lead on that. Cause I don't know how much.
Yeah. And I mean, there's some, there's like 3 or 4 different things that I've thought of that could improve the model. The only thing is, again, like I said, it's a limited set of data, right? So a year from now, I could probably go in and make this thing like way, way better, but you can't, you can't do quantitative modeling on nothing, right? So, yeah, absolutely. The other thing to think about though is that like the more effective this vault is, the less effective its returns will be, right? Because the signal will go away. Because right, as it performs its function of stabilizing DIGG, there will be less opportunity for it to buy and sell, right? Theoretically,
it makes sense. I think there's a balance here, right? Like I think you don't want it to have some sort of like aggressive approach where you mentioned it just like buy, sell, and like kind of empty the cupboard at the high and low points. But at the same time, I think there's probably an economic or financially like a reason. We want a reason for people to deposit in the vault, and at the same time to stabilize DIGG. So I think the balance that you've kind of mentioned makes sense, and I imagine it's going to require a lot of like just iterations as we go through UAT and just a guarded launch, and we can kind of figure out what the right balance is, and then adjust as we go forward, and you get better data.
And when you're doing this modeling, you're not assuming that the prices are actually moving, or the trades that the bot is doing are actually moving the market, right? You're just kind of assuming.
No, yeah, that would be a secondary
historical data.
Yeah. Right, that would be a secondary effect, and actually it's like secondary and third order, right? Because I could adjust and say like, okay, we sold yesterday, so let's like adjust the future price or whatever. But you can't model how the market will react to you buying and selling, right?
Yep. I think this is really interesting. And if it turns into some kind of thing where users are depositing, and then either if there's some kind of like DIGG governance token and they're depositing in voting on the parameters of the stability vault, or even just voting with their deposits, like there's going to be additional levels of complexity layered onto it. So, I mean, super interesting, but very hard to, I think, yeah, like a lot of the things, this is very hard to model going forward based on the limited data and all the different levels of complexity that are on top of each other. Let's see, I see we have Clayton from UMA on here. Thanks for joining so late. We just have a couple minutes left, but do you want to give us an update on what things look like from your side in terms of getting the options minted and distributed out?
Hey guys, yeah, thanks for having me on. Was just finishing up an AMA with Aragon, so that's why I was so late. So I'm still sort of catching up. Excited to kind of be playing around with this kind of rebasing design. Like I recognize that you guys are really paving the way on the design of an algorithmic coin that works this way, and like kind of just tweaking the incentives and finding a way to make it work, which is cool. I don't personally have tons of details around like the minting of these options. I'm just not involved with the DevX side as much. But I'm happy to relay questions if you have them. But yeah, I'm kind of just showing up for prosperity and support. I'm not sure I have anything terribly useful to add.
Yeah, I think what we need to mint, so we're good.
Cool.
Yeah,
we're good.
Prosperity and support.
I think there's a lot of I had talked to Clayton beforehand to see if he could join, and I know we're out of time now, but I think maybe just to kind of say this really quick before we finish out is, I think there's a lot of things that as we go forward to the next round of options, we want to look at both the community for feedback, but also really hoping to kind of partner Clayton with UMA and just kind of figuring out how can we create, a more viable and scalable product that can be very simple to run and very easy to understand, and can grow, and we can iterate and kind of evolve the process to be, even more successful. So yeah, I appreciate you topping on, but I probably not much to talk about at this moment, and more in the future.
Yeah, sounds awesome. It's really exciting stuff that you guys are working on, and I'm excited to have gotten, I'm now a DIGG holder myself, and excited to be a part of it directly. And yeah, it's pretty cool to know that you guys are going to keep kind of tweaking things to make this work, because that faith in the fact that you will do that becomes part of its own support, right? Just fascinating. It's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
I appreciate everybody joining today. I've actually got a hard stop, just because I actually joined another call unrelated to DeFi. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to check out the Rebase channel, DM any one of us. We're happy to talk more about this, and more to come in the coming days. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. And TomsOX app, you have the POAPs for this call.
Yeah,
right?
I'm distributing the box. If people will
Awesome.
just
So
give me a break, they are so impatient.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Cheers,
All right,
guys.
well, thanks everyone. Thanks Clayton. Thanks 1500 Badger for the stability vault wisdom. Look forward to exploring all that and more on the next DIGG Dojo. So we'll see you then. Take care.